A shivering homeless girl stood near a luxury restaurant window, her eyes locked on the people laughing inside. She was only 9, barefoot and starving. When she walked up to a well-dressed man eating alone and softly asked, "Can I eat with you?" every head in the restaurant turned, but no one expected what that man would do next. What he said broke the silence, and within moments, even the waitstaff could not hold back their tears. The wind bit hard as little Aria stood barefoot outside the glowing windows of the lavish Crustwood grill. She hugged her arms around her tiny body, wearing nothing but a worn-out hoodie and leggings that barely reached her ankles. Inside, warmth, laughter, and the clinking of silverware painted a completely different world. People passed her by like she was invisible. She was used to it. Most days, she dug through trash cans behind bakeries or shared half a sandwich with the older man who watched over her near the train station. But tonight, hunger hurt more than usual. As she watched a waiter place a large plate of pasta in front of a suited man seated alone, her stomach growled loudly. She hesitated, then gathered her courage. The man looked kind, maybe in his 40s, with a silver watch and calm eyes. She stepped inside the restaurants, each barefoot step echoing awkwardly against the polished floor. Waiters froze. A woman covered her nose. Someone whispered, "Where is her mother?" But Aria did not look at anyone except the man. She stood by his table and, in a whisper, asked, "Can I eat with you? Just a little?" The room fell into stunned silence. The man set down his fork. Slowly, he looked up at her, then around at the judging faces in the restaurant. One waiter had already started toward them, ready to escort her out. But the man raised one hand. "Do not touch her," he said calmly. Everyone paused. Then he did something no one expected. He stood up, pulled out the chair across from him, and said, "Of course you can eat with me. In fact, you are my guest tonight." Aria's eyes widened. She looked around, unsure if this was real. But when she sat down, the warmth of the chair felt like a dream. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. The waiter returned, confused. The man said gently, "She will have anything she wants. Start with soup, hot, and bring a hot chocolate, extra cream." In the corner, a woman gasped. Another dabbed at her eyes. But as Aria sipped her soup and whispered, "Thank you," the man's face changed. He looked at her more closely. Then he asked a question no one expected. "What is your name and why do you look so familiar to me?" The restaurant had returned to a quiet murmur, but the mood had shifted. Waiters moved more gently. Guests glanced over their shoulders at the table in the corner, where a millionaire dined with a homeless girl. Aria's lips were still red from the hot chocolate. She held the cup with both hands, sipping carefully, her fingers no longer trembling. The man across from her smiled gently, but there was a strange intensity behind his eyes. He said, "Aria, do you have any family?" "My name is Aria," she said softly, not quite meeting his gaze. "Aria Miles." He froze. "Miles?" he repeated. She nodded. "That was my mom's name too, but she went to heaven when I was 5. A long silence followed. The man's fingers curled around his glass of water, but he did not drink. Something about the girl's name had struck a nerve. "I'm sorry, Aria," he said, his voice softer now. "No child should be alone at your age." She nodded slowly, then looked up. "What is your name?" The man hesitated. "Elias." She blinked. "Elias? Like in the magazine?" Now it was his turn to be surprised. "You have read magazines?" "There was a torn one near the bus stop once. There was a man in a suit named Elias Monroe. He gave money to hospitals." "That is me," he said quietly. Her eyes widened, but she did not say anything. She just smiled shyly and took another bite of her soup. Elias couldn't take his eyes off her. The way she spoke, the shape of her nose, her eyes, something stirred in him. Something buried. He leaned in. "Aria, What was your mother's first name? Lena, she said. Lena Miles. Elias gripped the edge of the table. His heart began to race. That name, it was impossible. It had been over a decade. Was your mother ever a musician? He asked slowly. Aria nodded. She sang lullabies to me. Even when we had no food, she still sang. Elias's throat tightened. He whispered, did she ever talk about a man she loved? Aria's smile faded. She did. She said he was kind and brave and rich, but his family made her leave. A lump formed in Elias's throat. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the little girl across from him. A girl who had been living on the streets. A girl who looked just like someone he once begged to stay. Suddenly, everything made sense. The eyes, the voice, the name. She was not just any homeless girl. She was his daughter. Elias stood up so quickly his chair tipped backwards. The restaurant paused again. He knelt beside Aria and gently held her hand. Aria, do you know who I am to you? She shook her head. He swallowed hard. I think I am your father.
Aria blinked in confusion. She searched Elias's eyes, trying to understand the words he had just said. You think you are my father? She whispered, as her small hands gripped the warm cup in front of her. Elias nodded slowly, trying to hold back the wave of emotion rising in his chest. Yes, Aria. I knew your mother, Lena Miles, a long time ago. He paused. We were very much in love. Aria tilted her head. Then, why did you leave? The question pierced deeper than she would ever know. I did not leave, Elias said softly. My parents, they disapproved of Lena. She was not wealthy. She was not from the world I came from. My father called her a distraction. He forced me to end things with her. Aria stayed quiet. Elias clenched his jaw. I tried to find her years later. I wrote letters. I searched every record. But by then, she had vanished. I never knew she was pregnant. I never knew she had you. The table between them now felt far too small to hold the weight of what was unfolding. I am sorry, he said. I do not know how to say it better, but I think you are my child. Aria did not cry. She simply looked down at her lap, thinking. After a moment, she pulled something from the inside of her torn hoodie. It was a small, creased photo. Faded from time and rain, the edges curled, but the image was still clear. A young woman, smiling wide, holding a baby. And next to her, a man in a suit. Elias's heart stopped. He reached for the photo with trembling hands. That is me, he whispered. That is your mother. That is us. Aria finally spoke. She said he loved us, that he was taken away. I never really believed it. But now, I think I do. Tears ran down Elias's face. He wiped them with the back of his hand, overwhelmed. Around them, no one dared interrupt. Waiters had paused. Even the chefs peeked from the kitchen. Aria, he said through trembling breath, you will never go hungry again. You will never sleep outside again. I will make this right, I promise you. Her voice was barely a whisper. Are you sure? Elias stood, walked to her side, and knelt again. This time not as a millionaire, not as a man in a suit, but as a father. He gently embraced her, and she sank into his arms like she had been waiting her whole life for this moment. Then, suddenly, a camera flashed. Someone had been recording, and within seconds, whispers turned to chatter. That is Elias Monroe. Is that a homeless girl? Wait, is that his daughter? One waiter muttered, this is going viral. Elias looked up, his arms still wrapped around Aria. Let them talk. But then his phone buzzed, again and again. When he finally picked it up, his expression changed. Aria watched his hands tremble again, but for a very different reason. He stared at his screen. then whispered, "Oh no." Elias stared at his phone screen as the blood drained from his face. "Oh no," he whispered again. Arya looked up, her small hand still resting on his shoulder. "What is it?" He swallowed hard. "News outlets, social media, someone recorded us. The photo, it's already spreading." Arya blinked, confused. "Is that bad?" Elias hesitated. Then, without saying a word, he turned the phone to her. On the screen was a headline: "Billionaire Elias Monroe seen hugging homeless child. Secret daughter?" Under it was the photo. Him on his knees, Arya in his arms. The moment was real, and now the entire world had seen it. "They will ask questions," Elias said. "They will dig into your past. They will judge." Arya looked down, suddenly unsure again. "Maybe I should go." But Elias stopped her. "No, never again." He took a breath, then stood and turned to the entire restaurant. "Excuse me," he said, his voice loud and clear. Every head turned. "This little girl," he gestured toward Arya, "is not just a stranger. She is my daughter. I abandoned the woman I loved years ago because I was too afraid to stand up to my father." His voice cracked. "And because of that cowardice, this child, my child, has been sleeping on cold sidewalks and begging for food." Murmurs rippled across the room. "I do not deserve forgiveness, but I will not waste another second hiding. From this day forward, she is my responsibility, my family, my daughter." He turned to Arya again, kneeling before her. "I cannot take back what happened, but I can give you the life you deserve, if you let me." For a moment, the restaurant held its breath. Then Arya whispered, "Can I still have the hot chocolate too?" Laughter broke out through tears. Elias smiled, wiping his face. "You can have all the hot chocolate in the world." 1 week later, a press conference buzzed with reporters. Elias Monroe stepped to the podium, dressed not in designer suits, but in a simple gray coat, with Arya by his side, holding his hand. "This is my daughter, and I will use every dollar I have to help children like her, starting with the Lena Miles Foundation, named after her mother. No child should ever feel unwanted, unseen, or hungry again." Cameras flashed, reporters clapped. Arya squeezed her hand tighter. Later that night, they stood in front of a fireplace, wrapped in warm blankets, photos of her mother on the mantel. Elias looked down at her. "She would be proud of you." Arya smiled. "She always said, someone would find me one day." He leaned down, kissed the top of her head, and whispered, "You were never lost. You were just waiting to come home."